People talk about ghosts here, about haunted hotels, about voices in the dark. But that's not the truth. The truth is worse. Jerome doesn't haunt people. It remembers them. Every step you take on that mountain road, every promise you make too quickly, every secret you think no one saw, the mountain sees. In 2010, a young man named Jacob Miller believed he was simply driving home one night. He believed the road was dangerous, but familiar, that fate was random, that accidents were just accidents. He was wrong, because what happened to Jacob was not sudden. It was warned. A candle went out at his wedding. An old woman spoke words no one wanted to hear, and the mountain waited, patiently, silently. What you're about to hear is not a ghost story. It is not a legend. It is not a tale meant to scare you for fun. It is a story about what happens when warnings are ignored, about what returns when justice is unfinished, and about a town that does not release the dead until the living have paid their debt. Jerome, Arizona, a town that does not rest on the mountain, but clings to it. At night, Jerome feels like it's holding its breath. The streets are narrow and steep, carved into the side of Mingus Mountain like scars that never healed. Old wooden houses lean forward at impossible angles, their porches sagging, their windows dark even when lights are on inside. Beneath them, abandoned mines open their mouths to the earth, shafts that once swallowed men, machines, and hope, and never gave them all back. People who live in Jerome learn something early. You don't rush here. You don't challenge the mountain. And you don't ignore signs. Jacob Miller did not grow up in Jerome. He only passed through it, every day. In 2010, Jacob was in his early 20s, working at a lumberyard and building supply warehouse near the base of the mountain, closer to Cottonwood. He was strong, quiet, reliable. The kind of man who showed up early, kept his head down, and believed that if you worked hard enough, life would eventually fall into place. Every morning, before the sun fully rose, Jacob drove down from Jerome along the twisting mountain road. And every evening, when the sky turned copper and the desert cooled, he drove back up. That road was narrow. 2 lanes in theory, 1 lane in practice. Sharp curves with no guardrails. Drop-offs that vanished into darkness. Jacob told himself he knew it well. Still, some nights, the road felt longer than it should have been. There were moments when his headlights seemed swallowed by the dark ahead. Moments when the mountain air grew suddenly cold, even in summer. Moments when he felt watched, though there was nothing in the mirrors. He never mentioned it to anyone. Jacob had other things on his mind. Emily Carter. He had known Emily since high school in Cottonwood. They weren't the dramatic kind of couple. No loud fights. No grand gestures. Just familiarity, comfort, a sense that they had always been moving in the same direction. When Emily told him she was pregnant, Jacob didn't panic. He went quiet, and then he nodded. Families talked. Decisions were made quickly. A wedding was planned sooner than anyone expected. Not extravagant, simple, local. Jerome was chosen. A small, old church built directly into the mountainside. Stone walls thick enough to keep out heat and sound. Wooden beams darkened by age, candle smoke, and prayers whispered by people who needed answers more than blessings. A few days before the wedding, a woman approached Jacob's family. She was old, older than she looked, or perhaps she looked older than she was supposed to. No one seemed to know her exact age. She had lived in Jerome as long as anyone could remember, which in Jerome meant something different than elsewhere. Her house sat near one of the abandoned mines. No flowers, no decorations, just a porch that creaked even when no one stood on it. She spoke softly. She said she did not wish to offend. Then she said, "This marriage carries misfortune." Pause. Silence. The kind that makes people uncomfortable. She told them that unions formed under pressure, fear, obligation, often attracted things that fed on imbalance. That the mountain did not favor rushed vows. That Jerome remembered broken promises and demanded payment. She did not threaten. She did not curse. She simply warned. Jacob's family thanked her and dismissed her words as superstition, because love or responsibility always sounds more reasonable than fear you can't explain. The wedding day arrived under a pale sky. The air felt wrong. Not stormy, not windy, just cold. Inside the church, candles lined the altar. Guests filled the pews, coats pulled tighter than necessary. No one could explain why the temperature felt several degrees lower than outside. Jacob stood at the altar. Emily stood across from him. 2 candles were lit. Emily's flame burned steady, tall, calm. Jacob's candle flickered, then went out. A soft hiss, a thread of smoke curling upward. Someone laughed nervously. "It's the draft," a voice whispered. The candle was relit. It went out again. Another murmur rippled through the church. A window was checked. A door was adjusted. Nothing was open. The candle was lit a 3rd time, and once again, it died. The air around Jacob felt heavier, thicker, as if the cold had weight. Emily's candle never wavered. At the back of the church, the old woman stood. She did not move. She did not speak. She only watched. Jacob felt a tightness in his chest. A brief, sharp sense that something was wrong. Deeply wrong, but already beyond stopping. The vows were spoken anyway. The bells rang, and Jerome listened. Because the mountain hears things long before people do. And once it knows your name, it does not forget. After the wedding, life did not collapse. That was the first mistake. Nothing dramatic happened. No sudden illness. No screaming nightmares. No blood. Just small shifts. Subtle changes that were easy to ignore. Jacob returned to his routine. Every morning, he drove down the mountain toward the lumber yard near Cottonwood. Every evening, he climbed back up into Jerome, following the same narrow road that curved like a question with no answer. Emily stayed home more often now. The pregnancy tired her quickly. She said the house felt colder than before, even during the day. Jacob told her it was just the mountain air, that Jerome was always like that. But sometimes, when he came home late, he found the lights already on. Not because Emily was afraid, because she said the house felt crowded when it was dark. Jacob laughed it off. Still, he began sleeping lightly. He dreamed of the road, always the same curve, always just before the drop, always the feeling that someone was standing behind him, close enough to touch. He never saw a face. On weekends, Jacob met friends on Main Street. Old bars with warped floors and low ceilings. Places that smelled like beer soaked into wood that had been cut a century ago. That was where Ryan Cole always appeared. Ryan had once worked at the same lumber yard. He knew Jacob's schedule, his habits, his strengths, and his opportunities. Ryan smiled easily, slapped backs, bought rounds. He played the role of a friend well, too well. Jacob never noticed how Ryan's eyes lingered when people talked about the wedding, or how his jaw tightened when someone congratulated Jacob on the baby, or how his laughter came a second too late, or a second too loud. Jealousy does not announce itself. It waits. One night, as they drank, Ryan leaned closer and said, "That mountain suits you, man. Jerome always keeps what it likes." Jacob laughed. He didn't hear the warning hidden inside the joke. As weeks passed, the road home grew darker. Not literally. Something else. The headlights seemed weaker. The curves tighter. The drop-offs deeper. There were moments when Jacob felt pressure in his chest as he rode, like the air itself was resisting him. Once, halfway down the mountain, his engine stalled for no reason. Just for a second. Long enough for silence to rush in. And in that silence, he heard breathing. Not his own. The engine started again. Jacob told no one. The night it happened began like any other. Jacob left the bar late. Too late. The streetlights cast weak yellow pools along Main Street. Most windows were dark. Jerome felt hollow, like a body after the soul has stepped out for a moment. He put on his helmet. Started the motorcycle. The road waited. As he descended, the temperature dropped sharply. The wind cut sideways. The curves came faster than he remembered. His headlights caught the guardrail, then nothing beyond it. Halfway down the mountain, just before the sharpest bend, something moved. Not from the road, from behind. A sudden impact. Not a crash. Not a slip. A shove. The motorcycle lurched sideways. Tires screamed. Metal scraped. The world tilted violently, and the mountain opened its mouth. Jacob did not have time to scream. Morning came quietly. They found him on the road leading toward Cottonwood. Broken. Still. Tire marks across his body. The motorcycle twisted nearby like a discarded limb. Authorities called it an accident. Most people nodded. But in Jerome, people whispered. They whispered that the mountain never pushes without being pushed first. That Jerome does not claim the careless, only the chosen. Emily collapsed when she heard the news. The candle from the wedding was remembered. The old woman's words repeated. At the funeral, the air was heavy again. No wind, just cold. People avoided the mountain road that night. And somewhere in Jerome, someone watched the grave being filled. Not with grief, but with relief. Because the mountain had not finished listening yet. And Jacob Miller was not done speaking. The funeral was held beneath a sky the color of ash. Clouds hung low over the foothills, unmoving, as if the mountain itself were holding them in place. The small cemetery at the base of Mingus Mountain felt exposed, too open, too quiet. No birds, no insects, just the scrape of shoes on gravel and the soft, uncomfortable sounds of people breathing too carefully. Jacob Miller's coffin was simple, wood, polished, heavy. Emily stood closest, supported on both sides, her hand resting on her stomach as if to shield what remained. Her eyes were open but unfocused, staring somewhere beyond the grave, somewhere higher up the mountain. People said the usual things. He was a good man. He worked hard. Accidents happen on those roads. But the words sounded thin. In Jerome, no one truly believed it was just an accident. They stood in small groups, whispering when they thought no one was listening. They spoke of the wedding candle, of the cold air in the church, of the woman who had warned them. Someone said, very quietly, "Jerome doesn't let go of those who die wrong." The coffin was lowered. The sound it made when it touched the straps, a dull thud, like the earth acknowledging receipt. That night, Jerome felt tighter. The bars closed earlier. Fewer lights stayed on. The mountain road lay empty longer than usual, its curves swallowed by darkness. And Ryan Cole stayed away. For a few days, no one saw him. When he finally appeared, it was not at a bar. It was at the cemetery. Ryan arrived in the late afternoon, when the sun slanted low and shadows stretched long across the graves. He carried a small plate of fruit, apples, oranges, clean, carefully arranged. He stood before Jacob's grave longer than necessary. No one heard what he said, if he said anything at all. When Ryan turned and walked away, his footsteps faded quickly. The air around the grave remained unnaturally still. Then, the plate moved. Not slowly, not gently. It slid forward and fell. The sound was sharp. Ceramic cracking against stone. Fruit rolling across the dirt. No wind. No animal. Nothing nearby. A groundskeeper found the mess later and shook his head. He said nothing, but he did not put the fruit back. The next morning, people noticed something else. The fruit had rotted, not softened over time, not bruised, rotten. Skins collapsed inward, dark spots blooming like infection, a smell that did not belong to fresh offerings. Other items left at the grave, flowers, candles, notes, were untouched. Only Ryan's offering had spoiled. Word spread quietly. Jerome noticed patterns. Emily stopped sleeping entirely. She said she heard footsteps in the house at night. Not pacing, not wandering, standing. Jacob's clothes smelled faintly of cold earth. No matter how many times they were washed, the scent returned, damp, metallic, wrong. Then the dreams began. 4 others. A man who had known Jacob since childhood dreamed of the mountain road, of headlights dying mid-curve, of someone laughing softly behind him. A woman dreamed of a candle guttering out, again and again, until the wax flooded the altar and drowned the flame. And one night, someone woke screaming. It was a man from Jerome. Someone ordinary. Someone stable. Someone who had no history of illness. He collapsed in his living room just after midnight. When his wife tried to wake him, his body was rigid, cold, heavier than it should have been. When his eyes opened, they were wrong, not rolled back, not unfocused, empty. His voice, when he spoke, was not his own, lower, rougher, as if dragged up from somewhere deep. I didn't fall. Pause. I was pushed. The room went silent. His breathing slowed. His posture changed. His hands curled slightly, fingers stiff, unfamiliar in their movements. He named the road, the curve, the moment. He named Ryan Cole. He said the shove came from behind, sudden, precise. That money had changed hands. That jealousy had sharpened intention. He spoke of the wedding. The candle was the first warning. Pause. You chose not to listen. He spoke of the grave. The earth knows what is offered in truth and what is offered in fear. When the man finally collapsed again, his body went limp. His eyes returned to normal. He remembered nothing. But Jerome remembered everything. People avoided Ryan. Not openly. They crossed streets, lowered voices, watched him when he didn't know. Ryan began drinking alone, sleeping with the lights on. He said he felt watched. And somewhere, beneath the mountain, something shifted, because the dead, once unheard, had begun to speak. After the first possession, Jerome did not explode into chaos. It tightened. People stopped talking openly. Conversations ended when footsteps approached. Doors closed more carefully. Candles stayed lit longer at night, even when no one claimed to believe anymore. The man Jacob had entered recovered physically within days. Spiritually, he did not. He complained of gaps in time, of moments when the room felt farther away than it should have been, of a pressure behind his eyes, as if someone stood just behind his thoughts, waiting. Then Jacob came back again. This time, he stayed longer. It happened during a small gathering at a house near Main Street. Nothing dramatic. Just people sitting quietly, pretending the town hadn't shifted around them. The man froze mid-sentence. His head tilted slightly, like he was listening to something no one else could hear. When he spoke, the room went cold. I can't stay long. Pause. This takes strength. His voice dragged, each word sounding pulled through gravel. His eyes fixed on nothing, pupils wide, reflecting candlelight without warmth. He spoke clearly now. He said Ryan Cole had followed him that night, that the bar had not been coincidence, that the timing had been arranged. He said the man who pushed him had been paid, not much, just enough. Enough for jealousy to become action. Pause. He described the shove again. The exact moment his balance failed. The sound of the motorcycle screaming against the road. The way the mountain felt, eager. The mountain didn't kill me, Jacob said. It accepted me. He spoke of the wedding candle. When my flame died, it wasn't wind. Pause. It was warning. He said Emily's candle burned because her path continued. His flickered because his was narrowing. That the mountain had already seen the curve, the hands, the fall. He spoke of the fruit at the grave. Offerings made from fear rot quickly. When the man collapsed, several people were crying. Others could not move. Word spread faster this time. Ryan stopped leaving his house. When he did, he moved quickly, head down, eyes darting. He slept little, drank more. His hands shook even when he tried to hide them. He told no one what he saw, but at night, Jerome heard him, shouting, arguing, begging. Neighbors said they heard his voice crack as he pleaded with someone who wasn't there. Emily, meanwhile, felt Jacob near her constantly. Not visibly, not audibly, just present. The house felt heavier at night. Objects shifted slightly when she left the room. The air near the bed dropped several degrees just before sleep took her. She began lighting candles. One for Jacob, one for the unborn child, one for forgiveness, though she wasn't sure from whom. Jacob returned a third time. This time, he asked for something. Pray for me. Pause. Not because I'm lost. Pause. But because I'm tethered. He said the mountain held him because his death was unresolved. That truth anchored him. That justice loosened the ground. He asked for candles to be lit not in fear, but in tension. He asked for acts of kindness done in his name. Quiet things. Anonymous things. The mountain listens to balance. Then his voice sharpened. And it is listening to Ryan. That night, the man who had physically pushed Jacob died. A motorcycle accident. Same road, same curve, same silence. People stopped calling it coincidence. Ryan did not leave his house after that. When he finally did, he looked thinner, hollow, like someone who had been awake too long and seen too much. He told a bartender he felt hands on his back whenever he walked near a road. That mirrors no longer reflected him correctly. That sometimes, when he blinked, he was already standing somewhere else. Jerome watched. Because Jerome always watches those who owe. Jacob appeared one final time. His voice was calmer, weaker. Justice has begun. Pause. But I need to let go. He asked again for prayer. 4 candles. For good done quietly. He said Emily and the child would be safe. The mountain will not take what is balanced. Then, silence. No collapse. No drama. Just absence. Ryan did not die. He lived. And that was his sentence. Jerome loosened its grip. But the mountain never forgets the weight of a soul. And neither does the road. Ryan Cole did not die. That was the cruelty of it. After the man who had physically pushed Jacob Miller was killed on the mountain road, same curve, same sudden end, many believed the debt had been paid, that the mountain had closed the account. Jerome knew better. Ryan was left alive. And Jerome does not leave the guilty untouched. It leaves them aware. Ryan began to unravel quietly. No outbursts. No confessions. Just erosion. Slow. Constant. He stopped sleeping. When he did drift off, it lasted only minutes before he snapped awake, gasping, hands gripping the sheets as if bracing against a fall. He told no one about the dreams, but his eyes betrayed him, red, sunken, rimmed with something close to terror. In every dream, the road appeared, always at night, always empty, always familiar, and always someone standing just behind him, close enough that he could feel breath on his neck. Ryan avoided mirrors. At first, he said it was just nerves, just stress. But over time, people noticed how he angled his body away from reflective surfaces, how he covered bathroom mirrors with towels, how he flinched when glass caught the light unexpectedly. Once, in a bar bathroom, someone heard him whispering, "No, I didn't mean it." Pause. I didn't think he'd die. The lights flickered. The bartender said Ryan stumbled out moments later, pale, shaking, staring at his own hands like they belonged to someone else. Jerome watched. Emily began doing exactly what Jacob had asked. She lit candles every evening. not frantic, not desperate, calm, intentional. One candle for Jacob, one for forgiveness, one for balance. She volunteered quietly, donated anonymously, did small kindnesses no one traced back to her. And slowly, the house grew lighter. The cold receded. The feeling of being watched faded. Jacob's presence softened, then thinned, like a voice heard from farther and farther away. Ryan's world, meanwhile, collapsed inward. He stopped working, claimed the road made him sick, said he couldn't drive without feeling hands on his back. When he walked, he hugged walls. When he crossed streets, he hurried. Any open space felt dangerous. He began seeing Jacob everywhere. Not clearly, not fully, just fragments. A reflection in a window that lingered too long. A shadow on the road that moved against the light. A voice in the wind that spoke his name, softly, patiently. You're still here. Pause. So am I. Ryan drank more. It didn't help. Alcohol dulled fear, but sharpened memory. He relived the night again and again. The call he made, the money exchanged, the certainty that it would only be a scare, a shove, a warning. He had not planned for the mountain. Jerome doesn't care about plans. It cares about outcomes. People stopped acknowledging Ryan. Not aggressively, not openly. They simply stopped seeing him. Seats around him remained empty. Conversations ended when he approached. Doors closed gently but firmly. Isolation is a language Jerome speaks fluently. One night, Ryan tried to leave town. He packed quickly, didn't tell anyone, drove toward the mountain road just before dawn. He didn't make it past the first curve. His car stalled. Not broken, not damaged, just dead. The silence pressed in. Ryan sat shaking, heart racing, unable to bring himself to step out. His breath fogged the windshield, though the air was not cold. Then, he felt it. A presence in the back seat. Not touching. Waiting. He screamed. The car started. Ryan turned around and drove back to town without looking behind him again. He never tried to leave Jerome after that. Years passed. Jacob was spoken of less. His story folded into the fabric of the town. One more lesson, one more warning. Ryan aged quickly. His hair thinned. His posture collapsed inward. He lived alone, moved rarely, spoke even less. He survived. And survival, in Jerome, is not mercy. It is remembrance without release. Sometimes, late at night, people walking near Main Street claimed they saw Ryan standing at the edge of the road, staring down the mountain, whispering apologies to the dark. And sometimes, they said, the dark whispered back, because justice had not ended. It had only slowed, and the mountain was still listening. Time did what it always does in Jerome. It moved, but it did not erase. Seasons passed over Mingus Mountain, brushing the town with snow in winter and dust in summer. Tourists came and went, drawn by the town's reputation. Haunted hotels, ghost tours, whispered legends sold cheaply in souvenir shops. But the people who lived there knew the difference. Stories sold for entertainment fade. Stories lived through remain. Jacob Miller's name stopped being spoken aloud after a while. Not because he was forgotten, but because he had been placed where certain names belong. into the quiet knowledge shared without words. Emily gave birth to a healthy child, a boy. She left Jerome not long after. No dramatic farewell, no announcement. Just a moving truck early one morning and an empty house by evening. The mountain did not resist her leaving. It never had. Her balance had been restored. Before she left, Emily lit candles one last time. 3 flames. One for Jacob. One for the child. One for Jerome. She said goodbye softly and felt something lift. Not vanish. Lift. Ryan Cole remained. He lived in Jerome like a man already buried. He aged faster than time required. His eyes dulled. His voice thinned. He spoke only when necessary, and even then, carefully, as if afraid certain words might summon something back. People said he began leaving offerings at the roadside. Small things, coins, candles, apologies spoken under his breath. But the mountain does not accept offerings born of guilt alone. It accepts balance. One winter night, long after Jacob had last spoken through another's mouth, the air in Jerome shifted again. Not sharply, not violently, just enough. A woman walking home from work felt it first, a sudden drop in temperature that made her breath fog unexpectedly. She slowed, listened. Someone stood beside her. Not solid, not entirely absent. She did not see a face, but she heard a voice. Calm, familiar. It's finished. Pause. I can rest now. She felt no fear, only stillness. Others felt it too that night. A soft loosening, like a knot finally giving way after being pulled too tight for too long. Ryan woke screaming. For the first time in years, there was no shadow behind him. No voice. No pressure on his chest. Just silence. The kind that follows judgment. In the days that followed, Ryan changed. Not redeemed. Not forgiven. Just emptied. He stopped leaving offerings. Stopped whispering apologies. He moved through town quietly, unnoticed, no longer followed by echoes. He lived out the rest of his days in Jerome. And when he died, years later, there were no signs, no warnings, no cold air, no candles extinguished. The mountain did not claim him. It had already taken what it needed. Jacob Miller appeared one final time. Not in possession, not in dreams, but in memory. People began recalling him clearly again, not as a victim, not as a ghost, but as he had been. Quiet, steady, real. The road where he died remained dangerous. It always would be. But accidents stopped happening there for a long time, as if the mountain had closed that chapter. Jerome returned to its familiar stillness. Tourists walked the streets unaware of what had passed beneath their feet. Guides told softened versions of the truth. Bars stayed open late again. Laughter returned, cautiously. But some nights, when the wind comes down from Mingus Mountain just right, when the road curves disappear into darkness, when a single candle flickers without wind, people remember. They remember that Jerome does not punish randomly. It warns, it waits, and it balances. Jacob Miller's death was not forgotten. It was accounted for. And somewhere in the quiet between one heartbeat and the next, a voice no longer needs to speak, because Jerome remembers everything. And once justice has been heard, the dead are finally allowed to be silent.